All right, YouTube. Good day. Hope you are doing well. This is going to be one in a series of who knows how many videos on the North Carolina situation with the hurricane. So, the Thunder Run results. The back seat is empty. The bed is empty. We got everything dropped off and returned out of there. So I'm going to have to do this from the road because I know I'm not going to have time when I get home to put all this together any more than I do now. So I'm going to try to get this out in parts, and really I'm not sure how long each one is going to be, but there's definitely a few different things specifically to discuss or to comment on, and just kind of give people ideas to think in your head about preparedness in particular, about the hurricane situation in particular, and the region of North Carolina that we went to in particular. So we'll just start off here with this first one. Hurricane Hilary, hit. So that was last week. So one thing that in particular stands out is the go-to, put your hands on and get to work mentality that exists. I don't know. I mean, we've had events before, in the region, northwestern North Carolina, and things just kind of, you get through it and it's no big deal. And everybody's kind of going about it with the same approach. Let's put it that way. We're just going to get through it, no big deal, as much as you can, practical. One thing I want to highlight here and just give you the definition of. So in this region, the northwestern corner, everybody refers to the 1940 flood. The 1940 flood was the big flood. That's the high watermark definition that we're going to use in a lot of these references that people refer to in the way things were done over the years in reference to that. And that's different than the 1916 Asheville flood, which you hear a lot on the news and on the media down there. So those are two separate events. They both were different. They both were not affected by the other in those two timelines, 40 and 1916, just because of the weather. The weather, whatever the weather was, wasn't big enough to cover the whole region, the whole mountainous area, right? So they're two different flood events that both regions prepared for or had knowledge of how bad it could get, right? So I'll be referring to the 1914 flood, and that's the high water standard that everybody knows about or has reference to in particular. So within a short period, I want to say by Tuesday, just about every passable road that could be, debris could be removed or a slight modification to the road could be done. Roads were open. The only roads that were closed are those that were so washed out, basically all pavement removed from the surface and washed out. Those are long-term projects, right? But anything that could be done with any type of light equipment that could be on hand in the area, not necessarily the person's driveway that used their own tractor, but a neighbor or somebody in the community had one. Those were all open by Tuesday, pretty much. Before I got there, we didn't even get in until this weekend. So the attitude of getting things put together and putting hands on to work was immediate, and it's the attitude. In getting to some discussions, there's people in this region who went down to Hurricane Katrina and rebuilt stuff for people. One of the notes that they made in their brain housing is that when they went to Katrina about 6 months later to help people rebuild their houses, there were still trees laying on houses 6 months later. And I'm not sure if because they were told, which I have an inkling it is because they were told, but be it what it may, the comment was basically, we went down to Katrina after 6 months to help people rebuild roofs and houses and stuff. and they still had trees on houses that could have been, cut up and put away and improved, sped up the process. Do what you can with what you have, right? And that has to go with the resilience, and it's a preparedness attribute. It's not like doing the things is not. You don't have to say preparedness to say you're ready to do the things, right? It's just the mentality of the people that's different. So I took note of that some people had done those things, and in particular, different church groups went to Katrina, and so I would say several hundred people, and specifically this area, Watauga County, and Ashe and Avery would be encompassed in that as well. Have that, so and it's just like any storm. You go out and do what you can with what you got, and that's the attitude. So I think that what you see, and one of the other comments was, well, we had to make the way clear so any help could come in. So people had that mindset too, that, well, we got to clear the way. If there's any help coming in, we got to get the way clear for them. We're not expecting them to just clear the way themselves, type thing. So that's another important mental attribute to consider, and know about your area. What's the mentality of the people at large? Because you can't do it all yourself. And this has to, this goes back to being in a good community where you live, or knowing that you don't live at a place like that and you kind of are on your own. That's it. It is what it is. But yeah, roadways clear. But Tuesday before, the week, not even a week is. That's like the first day that majority had power, and it continually has increased over the week. We're only a week out, and things in Boone are very much business as usual. A lot of places where there were videos of water running down the streets, you can barely tell. The places that got hit really hard, Walmart in particular, a couple of the shops and restaurants in that zone, right there where it flooded, in that next to that creek. I think they going to be a while to recover. Walmart parking lot has been turned into basically a recovery center where they've staged a bunch of staging resources. They fenced it in for the people helping out. So that's interesting. They know Walmart's not going to get back up and running for a while, so they're utilizing the parking lot for staging resources and people and organizing people and stuff like that. But the resiliency of the people cannot be underemphasized. It would be a whole different case if people were waiting around for somebody to help them, instead of everybody. And when I say everybody going to work, majority of people I know are over 70 years old that I'm talking about. So it's the resiliency of the people, having the capability to do it for themselves. Obviously there's other younger people that were involved and helped, but the old timer mentality definitely was active and kicked in, and they're a large portion. I think I put up one of the pictures I put on here last week. The fellowship hall at the church got washed out. Door got pulled out, basically. Water was like 3 feet high inside, totally destroyed. And they had it. We show up for Sunday, and they've got it all stripped out. Everything, all the flooring, all the drywall that is damaged below the water line, it's all stripped out, and it's in the process of drying. So they did earlier in the week all the road clearing, anything on the personal property, got together, and of note, a church that wasn't affected came over and helped them get all the mud and everything out of the floor and rip out all the stuff that had to go in the trash, right? 2 days of work done, and moving on to the next project. I think I want to emphasize too here the experience of the groups like this. As people who do missions in other countries over the years, they have the experience in dealing with places like Haiti, other hurricane impacted places where they've went to help people build. So we're talking teenagers that have done these things overseas, come back and have that understanding that hard work is hard work, but it's not impossible. So I think exposing your younger folks to that type of work in those type of situations where it's a short window, mission trips 1 to 2 weeks, depending on where you go, and they get the experience of hard work with somebody's teaching them some basic skills like holding the hammer and stuff, and they've came back and they've applied it in their own place to a high degree. In this case, it was cleanup, but the rebuild will come, and it sounds like a lot of rebuilds are going to happen in the same way. Everybody coming together to help. You get 50 people on a project, it doesn't take long compared to, if you just have 5 or 6, it's spread out. Doing 50 at each time speeds everything up. And I think that's the way that a lot of it's going to go. But everybody's waiting for everything to dry out right now. They're in the waiting period for a lot of things like that, where they've ripped out drywall and flooring and everything. It's got to get dried out, so it takes time. The storm itself, it sounds like there were small tornadoes impacted certain areas, because the description of the sound, the noise, there was depressurization of houses, like the windows were rattling, very loud noises. And one example was that an outside door was pulled out away from the house and broken off basically at the hinges. The next morning when they went to see the damage, it was basically a basement outside door. Very much sounded like a tornado. Small, however you depressurize the atmosphere that much to rip a door out, with the assistance of some flood water that was inside the basement probably, but that just doesn't happen normally in a normal wind event. If you have wind coming from one direction or whatever, it sounded very much like a tornado. And there's very select areas where there's like a path of trees are down, it's stripped, it's like in strips. Sounds like some very small tornadoes went through that were triggered by that. I don't know if meteorologically they can prove it, but that's what that was, or that's the description that I was given in particular on that, how the winds were. Not that you can prevent it, just know what you could get into in the middle of a hurricane, I guess. And even when you're in a place that doesn't, you don't have tornadoes in places like in the mountains like that. So the 1940 high water line was something that everybody built around. My granddaddy built the house that my aunt's in. Shortly thereafter, started building it shortly thereafter, like 47, 48 or something like that. Well, no, it probably wasn't started till in the 50s actually. But that basement where it started on the property was above the high water line of the 1940 flood. So that's what everybody built on that could, because it's above a creek, so it's above a water source that could flood, right? A neighbor had a bridge they built, and their grandfather, when they were going to rebuild it one year to make it better, and replace the old one, make sure you build it above the 1940 flood. That was the instruction. So they built it a foot higher than the 1940 flood. Water went several feet over that. So the high water mark that everybody historically knew was covered by this event. And it was up and down the mountains. It wasn't just localized. That's how significantly big this thing was. It covered the whole region with the flood, not what usually happens is a localized flood area for whatever reason. So what everybody had been building to was overtopped. And that just leads me to think about our Midwest prepper pyramid, right? And think about the escalation of events and worst case scenario, worst historical events. Preparing for those, a lot of that stuff that you talk about for natural disasters in particular, preparing for them, you want to be prepared more so, but also be ready for that to fail. I don't know, it's one of those things, you can only build a bridge so high before it's not useful, right? You can only do so many structural things, building wise, or whether it's in a floodplain, from winds, from fire, till a bigger, worse event comes along and makes it, oh, this is worse. So I don't know what different people can do about that. I mean, we talk about the basement flooding. It was built to the 1940 standard. It flooded, but not so much that, like, there's no erosion. It's just the water got in the basement. Of note with that, see, this is already 15 minutes and I am not even touching the surface of so many things. But I'm just going to get, again, this is going to be many pieces. So the stuff damaged in the basement. Careful what you put in your store in different areas. Some people put stuff in the basement so it doesn't get damaged in a certain way. Some people put things in the attic so it doesn't get wet in the basement. But in particular, there was canned goods on a shelf. So the bottom row of those canned goods ended up in the water. And also of note was plastic tubs, you know, your Tupperware big Safe Light, whatever, or not Safe Light, but Sterlite tubs that you get at Walmart and stuff, that you have the lids that sit on them. When they started floating, they fell over. So everything in them got compromised due to that. So if you're storing things like that and you're in a place where water could get in, and potentially that much, so you figure that was, I think it was about 6 inches to a foot of water in the basement there. That's why those were able to float. Especially if you figure, like, you know, what do you put? You put some lightweight stuff in those tubs usually, maybe like blankets, extra quilts or something that maybe are light, and that's why they floated. I'm not sure exactly what they had in them, but I would imagine, you know, you think about winter clothes, summer clothes, maybe go in a storage bin like that. Floats up, turns over because it's top heavy, and it leaks into there. Because you think about it, if it's sitting there, water falling on it, no problem. Then it falls over and it gets compromised. So a lot of stuff got damaged that way. A whole row of canned goods along a wall was all damaged. Thinking about maybe a different storage solution of always have your canned goods at a certain level. But if you're in an earthquake zone like myself, canned goods need to make sure they're secured and against the wall and stuff. So that's just a few notes to start off with. I'm going to attach some video to this because we're already 17 minutes in of some of the damage. Of note, just about any piece of debris that was in anybody's yard or in their house is already out in piles ready to be picked up. We're not even a week in till after everybody is in the recovery mode. Again, people didn't even get power till Tuesday, less than a week, and there are already all debris. The big recovery agencies, Samaritan's Purse and local churches are the ones driving the ball, getting the things done. So there's gonna be some few clips in here of that, and some of the recovery projects. You look at bridges out, the construction of new or repair of places is already ongoing for a couple days already. So it's already, and I don't know how, because these are state highways, some of them, and already they got people working on them. So I don't know how the contracting for that went, but it went very quickly. So I don't know if that's North Carolina DOT that really did a good job, or if it's the local county manager type of business who schedules that. But that went to work sooner than, I don't know, you know, because these are places, I mean, obviously the ones that are critical to long roads deep into, you know, areas of the county you can't get to, that's important. But it's happening really fast, really fast. A lot of the stuff that's going on happens so much faster than I expected. So I'm going to drop this in here at 20 minutes, and we'll have more YouTube. We'll discuss more. We might do a live chat at some point once I get home. But I just wanted to get this out there and show some things and discuss some things and give some people some thoughts on the pyramid, worst case events, and what are you really planning for, and how can you really prepare for worse than the worst. All right, check it out.